It's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening to this year's Edward Said Memorial Lecture under the title Education Through Music, A Legacy of Edward Said. As many of you in this room know, the Edward Said Memorial Lecture Series is offered in honor of the distinguished cultural and literary critic and public intellectual Edward Said, who taught here at Columbia for the entire 40 years of his career. Organized by the Society of Fellows and the Heyman Center for the Humanities, the series pays tribute to Edward by bringing to Columbia speakers who embody his ideas and his work. Before I begin my introductory remarks and explain to you what we're doing this evening, let me thank the various sponsors of this event. Let me thank, first of all, the Society of Fellows and the Heyman Center for the Humanities. Let me thank the Center for Palestine Studies, which my colleagues and I helped to establish 10 years ago, the first such center in the United States, in fact, in the world. I want to thank as well the Italian Akademie, which is generously supporting this event, as well as the Institute for Comparative Literature and Society. Finally, the Barenboim-Said Foundation is also one of the sponsors. Finally, we should thank the School of the Arts for this wonderful venue in which the event will take place. Our focus this evening is one of the projects that was closest to Edward Said's heart, the West-Eastern Divan. He started this nearly a quarter of a century ago, together with his close friend and colleague, Maestro Daniel Barenboim, who will be sending us his greetings later on this evening. We'll be hearing about the Divan and about several projects that grew out of it from several people who are involved with it to this day, including Mariam Said, who is the vice president of the Barenboim-Said Foundation, which is a 501c3 to which you're all welcome to donate if you're impressed by this evening's event. And also by Daniel's son, the violinist Michael Barenboim. Michael is an acclaimed musician in his own right, and he is a professor at and the dean of the Barenboim-Said Akademie in Berlin. This is only one of several offshoots, successful offshoots, of the original project that was started in 1999 by Daniel and by Edward. So let me tell you very briefly what we're going to do this evening. Following my remarks and an introduction by Mariam Said, you will see a brief film on the Divan and on the projects that grew out of it. And we will then hear from a panel headed by Michael Barenboim and including two of the musicians in the West-Eastern Divan Ensemble. The ensemble is an outgrowth of the larger West-Eastern Divan Orchestra. You're going to keep all of these in mind because you'll be quizzed at the end of the evening. There are 4 or 5 institutions that grew out of this wonderful idea that Daniel and Edward had back in the 1990s. The ensemble, by the way, played marvelously last night at the 92nd Street Y. Some of you were fortunate to be there. It was an amazing performance, and my compliments to the musicians. It was wonderful, wonderful stuff last night. We're fortunate that 3 of these musicians, Michael and 2 of the others, whom I'll introduce later, will thereafter, actually 5 of them, including Michael, will thereafter entertain us to a musical interlude, and then at the end of the evening, we'll have a chance for a question and answer with the musicians mainly. I don't think you want to ask me or maybe Miriam as many questions as you may have for the musicians. Now let me say in conclusion a couple of words about why I'm standing here tonight moderating this event. It's not because I'm the Edward Said Professor of Modern Arab Studies and Literature. It's because I had known Edward since my brother Idris, who was at that time a Columbia undergraduate, introduced me to him at Chock full of Nuts on the corner of 116th Street in Amsterdam. It's now a shake and steak, steak and shake, some damn thing, I don't know. It's been through many iterations. In any case, my brother was working there and he introduced me to, there's this professor you should meet, so we met. I later found out that Edward's mother, Hilda, and my mother played bridge together in Beirut. I didn't know that at the time that I first met him. I first met Maestro Barenboim at Edward Said's hospital bedside. I think it was Rush Memorial Hospital in Chicago, when Edward fell ill sometime in the early 90s, I believe, while he was giving a lecture in Chicago. At that time, as you may know, Maestro Barenboim was the chief conductor and director of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. They had already developed a long-standing friendship, the two of them, and Muna and I got to know Daniel in subsequent years as he and Edward first came up with the idea of the West-Eastern Divan. Daniel was the only person Muna allowed to smoke cigars in our house, which tells you how much she respected and admired him. We were then fortunate to be in attendance in Weimar in 1999, where the Divan first came together. There and later on in Spain and in other places, we had the privilege of watching Maestro Barenboim instruct and train young Palestinian, Israeli, Arab, and later Spanish musicians. Some of them, like Michael, have become established artists since then. We were also fortunate to be able to listen to Edward as he lectured to and enlightened these young people. And that represented the two wings of what they were trying to do, music and education. That's what the West-Eastern Divan was intended to propagate. I'm going to conclude by saying something that I think is important. Neither Edward nor Daniel was naive. Neither of them thought that bringing together a few gifted young musicians would lead to an end to the brutal struggle in Palestine. They both knew better. What they did believe was that music could serve as a bridge for understanding and education, and as a basis for a more humanistic and just world. That was their objective. They weren't going to try and bring about peace in Palestine, I promise you. Neither of them, neither Daniel today nor Edward before he passed, had any such illusions. What they were trying to do was simpler and narrower and more attainable, I think. That is what the Barenboim-Said Foundation, that is what the various initiatives it supports hope to do, whether the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, the large orchestra, you're going to see a film about it in a minute, or the ensemble that played, the 8 musicians who played last night at the 92nd Street Y, or the Barenboim-Said Akademie in Berlin, of which Michael is the dean, academic dean and a professor at, or the Barenboim-Said School for Music in Ramallah. All of these institutions hope to achieve the kind of ends that I just mentioned. So I welcome you all tonight in the hope that this will be a very special event for all of you. I want to now give the floor to Mariam Said, whom I'm going to introduce briefly. I'll later introduce the various panelists who will be talking to you. Mariam was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon, and currently resides in New York City, just down the street. Together with Daniel Barenboim, she is a major force behind the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, and she serves as the vice president of the Barenboim-Said Foundation here in the US, as well as of the Barenboim-Said School for Music in Ramallah. Mariam holds an undergraduate degree from the AUB, an institution I proudly taught at for many years, in Lebanon, and she holds 2 graduate degrees from Columbia. She worked for more than 20 years in the financial services industry in New York. So I ask you to join me in welcoming Mariam Said.
Okay. Maybe I should. Well, good evening, everybody. Edward Said passed away on September 25, 2003, almost 20 years ago. I can't believe it. It sounds surreal. Tonight, we remember him by celebrating 24 years of the musical project he established with his friend Daniel Barenboim, the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, and for short, I will be calling it Divan, that began as a medium-sized youth orchestra, is today a world-renowned orchestra that performs in the most prestigious halls of the world, in the world. The teaching program that started at the National Conservatory in Ramallah is now a full-fledged independent music conservatory, the Barenboim-Said for Music, BSFM, that teaches excellence in music. The last two programs, the Barenboim-Said Akademie and Pierre Boulet's Salle, developed because of Daniel's instincts in seizing opportunities and making them happen. Last but not least, the West-Eastern Divan Ensemble, and for short, I'll call it Ensemble as we proceed. I would like to thank Columbia University and the School of the Arts for allowing us to use this beautiful space, and the sponsors for making this event possible. Last but not least, our thanks go to all the energetic people who worked in making tonight a beautiful reality. Edward Said lived his life advocating for justice. An educator and a humanist, he challenged his students and demanded excellence in everything they did. As a Palestinian who cared about his people, he sought to empower and encourage them to receive a high-quality education and to demonstrate their limitless talents in every field, in every part of the world. Edward Said believed the essence of a good education is humanistic, and that excellence is only achieved through discipline, perseverance, and focus. Edward was also a pianist and an accomplished musician. Edward Said, the Palestinian public intellectual, met Daniel Barenboim, the Israeli conductor and pianist, by chance in London. Two exceptional worldly individuals found they had many interests that bind them, especially their love of classical Western music. They became friends and broke the barrier that originally separated them. They felt that this unique experience must be shared and extending to their own people. They recorded their conversation in a book titled Parallels and Paradoxes, Explorations in Music and Society. Daniel Barenboim, like Edward, believed in perfection, and as a professional musician, he too challenges the members of his orchestra to excel and achieve their maximum. Early in the 1990s, Daniel had introduced in Germany a new method of teaching KG children, education through music. The traditional music education teaches individuals how to read notes, play an instrument, and produce beautiful sound. Education through music not only teaches the individual how to read notes and play an instrument, but that music is a language, a means of communication, and a concept that broadens their minds and allows them to see things differently and encourages them to take intellectual risks. Edward arranged for Daniel to visit the West Bank and introduced him to the president of Birzeit University, where Daniel played a recital, and to the director of the National Conservatory of Music, an institution Edward had helped establish a few years before. In 1999, Weimar in Germany was designed cultural capital of Europe. In telling the story of the musical workshop that took place at Weimar, Edward wrote, and I quote, "Daniel was offered the chance to perform in Weimar. I happened to be there, and so was Yo-Yo Ma. We decided to do something different, a workshop of young Arab and Israeli musicians," end of quote. The organizers of the events were delighted. Edward and Daniel had found a way of extending their personal experience to their people. 65 musicians were ultimately selected from both sides. The workshop was a big success. The young musicians proved to be talented and very competent. Daniel made an orchestra out of them. They called the orchestra the West-Eastern Divan in honor of Goethe. Weimar was his city. By knowing the other as an equal and hearing and learning to think in different ways unsettled the participants, and this unsettling feeling allowed the musicians to search for new meanings. All these contradictory feelings found an outlet through the music. Daniel's conducting until today brings out this struggle, and audiences immediately resonate with the orchestra. Today, 24 years later, the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, that consists of over 100 musicians, is thriving. Its alumni are scattered around the world and has proved that the vision of its founders is here to stay. For the first 2 years, the Divan workshop took place in Germany. The third workshop was in Chicago, and it seemed that the experiment was ending with the Chicago workshop. What could they do to save it? As they were wondering what to do next, Daniel received a phone call from the director of the Fundación Tres Culturas in Andalusia. The Tres Culturas Foundation was a foundation in Andalusia, Spain, of the three monotheistic religions. That Spain was the only place, the Andalusia was the only place in Europe where there was coexistence. And they thought that project fitted perfectly. Bernardino Leon, the director of the Tres Culturas, called to offer the workshop a permanent home in Andalusia. Everyone was elated. The project continues. In 2002, the workshop convened in Pilas, a small town near Sevilla in Spain. In the summer of 2003, Edward and I attended the workshop in Spain. Edward was not feeling well. He died a month later. In 2004, the workshop took place without Edward. It consisted of the musicians from the Arab countries and Israel, plus a group of young children from both the National Conservatory of Music in Ramallah and from the newly established Barenboim-Said Conservatory in Nazareth. The younger group were the talented students from both these conservatories who came to observe how Daniel teaches musical performance and to take individual music lessons from members of the orchestra. The Andalusians were very generous. They supported the workshop and a tour of the orchestra at the end of the workshop. In 2005, the orchestra ended its tour with a historic concert in Ramallah. I must add that this concert would never have happened had it not been for Daniel's vision, insistence, tenacity, and perseverance. He refused to take no for an answer and kept reminding all that the impossible is easier to achieve than the difficult. There is a documentary film called Knowledge is the Beginning. It tells this story and it captures the concert in Ramallah. I urge you to try and watch it. It is very well done. In 2006, a couple of weeks before the workshop convened, the Lebanon-Israel war erupted. The Lebanese and many of the Syrian musicians were not able to attend. The atmosphere during that year's workshop was tense. Until 2006, Daniel was training young musicians to perform in a youth orchestra. At the end of the workshop, 1/3 of the most accomplished musicians will be invited for the next year's workshop, of which 2/3 will be new musicians. As the years went by, Daniel realized that the musicians are getting better and better every year. The formula he had devised, 1/3, 2/3, leads to an orchestra of a certain level. The musicians in the orchestra were not given the chance to evolve. It was time to develop this orchestra from a youth orchestra to a high standard orchestra. In 2007, the workshop took place in Salzburg, and the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra performed at the Salzburg Festival. And from then on, it became the world-class orchestra that we know today. The orchestra at that time was made up of Arabs and Israelis and some Spaniards, our hosts. A higher standard orchestra needed more musicians. The recruitment was expanded to include North Africans, Iranians, and Turks. After all, humanism is a global concept. BSFM was established. BSFM stands for Barenboim-Said for Music, was established in 2012 in Ramallah to provide musical education in Palestine for young children focused on excellence and perfection, while maintaining a philosophy of humanism. It is run by a highly accomplished Finnish director. The program is evolving and growing as we speak. After 8 years of music education, the students can earn a diploma in music that opens doors for them to audition and apply to continue their musical education abroad. 4 musicians from the Barenboim-Said for Music are currently enrolled at the Barenboim-Said Akademie in Berlin. BSFM's orchestra, the Philistine Young Musicians Orchestra, FIMO, consists of the students, the conservatories alumni, and Palestinians from the region and the diaspora is a small orchestra that teaches musical performance to the students. It performs frequently in Palestine, and in 2019, it performed a concert at the Musikverein in Vienna, Austria, and will be performing this year at the Boulez Saal in Berlin. Daniel has been the director of the Staatsoper in Berlin. The Staatsoper decided to renovate its premises. The premises included a second building behind the opera house, where in the old days they stored the sets and the costumes. The Staatsoper was offering to lease this building to a musical project. Daniel saw an opportunity that could not be missed. He leased the building as a new base for the divan and to establish a new kind of innovative institute of higher musical education in Berlin. It took a few years to realize the dream. Money had to be raised, and at the end, with the German government support, an Akademie of Higher Education was established in 2016-2017 academic year. The Barenboim-Said Akademie includes the Pierre Boulez Saal, a beautiful mid-size hall designed by Frank Gehry. This concert hall is a venue that serves many purposes. Students of the Akademie, the divan musicians, and international artists perform and conduct master classes. To conclude, our project includes 5 distinct programs: the Divan Orchestra, teaching music to young children in Ramallah, BSFM, the Barenboim-Said Akademie, and Boulez Saal in Berlin. And last but not least, the Divan Ensemble. The ensemble musicians are here, and some will participate in the panel discussion, and you will also hear some of them perform tonight. Before I conclude, I would like to say that my daughter apologizes for not being able to be with us tonight, and thanks you all for coming. And I would like to say that when Edward passed away, Daniel felt orphaned, and for a moment wondered if he could continue alone. Not only did he forge on undeterred, but he selflessly gave this project all he had. He created a diverse, socially responsible community of musicians. The results of his efforts are phenomenal. No one had done this before. Thank you.
It began as an experiment in listening to one another. It became a journey in finding equality through music. It is now a global ambassador for transcultural dialogue through music education and concerts. Founded in 1999 by Daniel Barenboim and Said, the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra brings together young musicians from Israel, Palestine, and other countries in the Middle East, offering them a chance to listen to the narrative of the other and engage in dialogue through music. This dialogue comes alive in the orchestra's concerts. As a world-class ensemble, the Divan performs at prestigious venues like the BBC Proms, Carnegie Hall, the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, or the Lucerne and Salzburg festivals.
My friend Daniel Barenboim and I have chosen this course for humanistic rather than political reasons, on the assumption that ignorance is not a strategy for sustainable survival. Discipline and dedication have provided us with the motor to bring our communities together in concert, without illusion and without abandoning our principles. What is so heartening is how many young people have responded, and how, even in this most difficult time, young Palestinians have chosen to study music, learn an instrument, practice their art. Who knows how far we will go and whose minds we might change.
Its concert in Ramallah in 2005 showed the world that the orchestra would not let itself be held back by political boundaries.
It is our belief that the destinies of these two people, of the Palestinian people and the Israeli people, are inextricably linked, and that it is our duty, all of us, to find a way to live together, because either we all kill each other or we learn to share what there is to share. It is with this message that we have come to you today.
In 2016, the United Nations recognized the work of the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra by naming it United Nations Global Advocate for Cultural Understanding, the first orchestra to receive this honor. In addition to orchestra performances, the Divan also appears as a chamber music ensemble under the direction of concertmaster Daniel Barenboim. Founded to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra in 2019, the West-Eastern Divan Ensemble brings the project to an intimate format and offers audiences the opportunity to experience the individual artistic achievements of its musicians. Based on the principle of education through music, several projects were founded as a continuation of the spirit and mission of the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra. In Ramallah, the Barenboim-Said Center for Music provides high-level musical education for young Palestinians. Through its classes and activities, the center supports the development of a vibrant Palestinian society where music plays an integral part in educational development and shapes the identity of children and young people. Since its creation in 2003, the project has developed into a center of excellence that offers education through music to 170 students, irrespective of their social or economic background. In Berlin, talented young musicians from across the Middle East and other countries have been studying at the Barenboim-Said Akademie, an innovative, government-recognized institution of higher education, offering a curriculum of music and the humanities. Inaugurated in 2016, the Academy also houses the Pierre Boulez Salle, a unique state-of-the-art concert hall designed by renowned architect Frank Gehry. Through their performances, education, and cultural exchange initiatives, the Divan and the Barenboim-Said projects are making a meaningful impact. They now offer young people from the Middle East and beyond the opportunity to overcome barriers that once seemed insurmountable, and against all odds, they continue to inspire hope for a better future.
I'm going to introduce all of the three musicians who are up here. There are actually 5 of them who will play for us later. Before I do that, and before I introduce you, Michael, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and read a message from your father, Maestro Daniel Barenboim. So please go ahead and do that. And then I'll introduce the 3 of you, and we'll have a brief discussion. Please.
Good evening. I deeply believe in the greater importance of music and its ability to influence and shape who we are as human beings. Edward Said shared this belief, and it was in this common spirit that after years of friendship, we embarked on the adventure and incredible success story that is the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra. From the outset, we focused on understanding what it means to listen to each other, both as musicians and as human beings. Edward Said was, for many, a great thinker, a fighter for the rights of his people, and an incomparable intellectual. But for me, he was always really a musician, in the deepest sense of the term. I had a concert at Carnegie Hall in New York a few years before his passing, and he was going through a very difficult period of his illness. He showed up at rehearsal with a volume of Schubert's pieces for 4 hands. He told me, "Today I want us to play at least 8 bars, not for the pleasure of playing, but because I needed to survive." When we played those few minutes of a Schubert rondo, I felt musically enriched in a completely unexpected way. That was Edward Said. For me, the loss of Edward Said has been a terrible blow, because it affects me in so many different areas. His friendship represented an intellectual stimulation such as I have never had, and which I will surely never have again. A deep friendship such as I have only rarely experienced. In so many different ways, since the loss of Edward, I feel much poorer than I would like to feel and imagine. It is through the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, as well as the Barenboim-Said Academy in Berlin, that his ideas will continue to thrive for many years to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. Let me now introduce our 3 other panelists. Miriam has been introduced. You know who I am. First, I'll introduce Michael. Michael Barenboim's 2011 performance of Schoenberg's Violin Concerto with Pierre Boulez in the Cologne Philharmonie was the beginning of a remarkable career. Following this celebrated debut, he has since performed the Schoenberg Concerto with the Vienna Philharmonic under his father, Maestro Daniel Barenboim, with the Chicago Symphony under Asher Fish, with the Israel Philharmonic under Zubin Mehta, and with the Berlin Philharmonic under Vasily Petrenko. Michael is a professor for violin and chamber music at the Barenboim-Said Akademie in Berlin, and he is the Akademie's dean since 2020. In addition, he is the founder, in fact, of the West-Eastern Divan Ensemble, 5 members of whom you're going to hear play this evening, and 2 members are here with us this evening to speak, which is, we just heard, is a group derived from the world-renowned orchestra, spreading its message of dialogue and understanding in a more intimate setting. Let me now introduce Miriam, who's at the far left. Miriam Manasherov was born in Israel in 1981. She took her first violin lessons with Luba Shochat at the age of 8. In recent years, she's been substituting for several orchestras, the Konzerthaus Berlin, the Gürzenich Orchestra, I'm sorry.
Gürzenich.
Thank you so much. In Cologne, I can pronounce Cologne at least, and the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, and had a 3-year contract with the WDR Symphony Orchestra in Cologne as well. Miriam also took part in chamber music festivals, a variety of them. She is the winner of the chamber music competition at the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance. She received scholarships from the America-Israel Cultural Foundation and the DAAD in Germany. After almost a decade in Germany, she now lives in Tel Aviv. Samir Obaido, second to my left, grew up in a Palestinian household in Amman in Jordan that emphasized music and the arts. In 2015, Samir applied to the Barenboim-Said Academy in Berlin in search of proper academic training and new international cultural impulses. During his studies, he received violin lessons from Axel Wilczok. Thank you so much. And as well as from Michael Barenboim, the gentleman to my left, and completed his bachelor's degree in 2019 from the Academy. Samir earned an artist diploma in 2020. He has been playing in the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra since 2017, and he's been a member of the West-Eastern Divan Ensemble since 2020. So let me ask each of the 3 of you, perhaps you first, Michael, to say a few words, perhaps about your experiences. And you, of course, of them, you're the most senior among them. You are now the dean of the Academy in Berlin. You were there in Weimar, I remember, all those many years ago, much younger. Now you're a grown man, now you're a professor, now you're an established musician. Can you say something about the divan and how it affected you? And you've already read your father's very touching words about it, but perhaps you can say something about it.
Yeah, of course. So I joined the divan when I was 14. It was the 2nd year of the existence of the orchestra. Incidentally, Miriam was there the 1st year of the divan.
You were in Weimar.
Yes, she was in Weimar the very first year. Right. So so for me, the aforementioned Axel Wilczok, who was his first teacher at the Academy, was my longtime teacher, who was coaching the first violin section of the divan back then. You probably met him there, exactly.
Can't pronounce his name, but I remember.
So I'm here for that. That's no problem. Yeah, and so I can safely say that I have enjoyed probably the vast majority of my music education through the divan. So I learned almost everything I know about music in the divan, through the divan, and through the various encounters that I've had the pleasure of having throughout the years. That's the one thing I can definitely say for me. The Academy, the project of the Academy, is something I find also very, very important, because the focus there, outside of the music education, which of course we must offer to aspiring musicians, is that we have a humanities component. All the students study history, literature, philosophy, for those 3 mainly, and other things as well, art history and other subjects, which we find extremely important, because we want to educate real artists. Artists, to our mind, means that they have a broad understanding of what they are doing, and not just specialists of their instrument. And it's something that I actually remember from Edward very much is this fierce anti-specialization. That he's also someone that I was, as I said, very young. So when I met him, I had the feeling this was someone who just knew everything about everything, which was very very strange also for me. But because he had this one thing that we want our students to learn, is he had curiosity. He was curious. If there was something that he was confronted with that he didn't understand, he would want to understand it. He would want to understand also the connection of that with other things. And this is something that is really at the basis of how we think of education. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Miriam, do you want to say a few words? There's a microphone somewhere. There should be one in every seat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam. I come from Israel. I play the viola. And I was the first year of the Divan in 1999. Means I'm the oldest from all my colleagues here. I was 18 at the time, and it was, I remember, I think it was in July, and in May we got a call, because I played in the Young Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra. It was like a student orchestra, and we got picked, like 10 or 15 people from the orchestra, and it was told to us that there is a workshop happening in Germany in the summer with the Maestro Barenboim, and you have 1 week to play for him because he's coming to conduct the IPO, the Israel Philharmonic, and you have to play for him something. And we were all very nervous. I was 18 or 17 at the time, and Maestro came and we played for him a few notes, and we all met in July, knowing nothing what's going to happen. We only knew it's a workshop with the Israeli and Arabs together, that we're going to work with Maestro, and Yo-Yo Ma is going to come. We're going to have some chamber music, and people from the Staatsoper are going to help us. So we met there in Weimar. 3 weeks we worked on this one program, which nowadays we cannot believe that it happened, but we were all very young, between 16 and I think the oldest one was 24, 25. And we met, we had rehearsals every day with Maestro. I still remember the first rehearsal we had with him. We played Beethoven 7th, and he worked on the first page literally 2 hours. And for me, as an 18-year-old, it was really phenomenal. I really remember this. He worked on every detail, and he really talked to us like we're adults, adult musicians. And he didn't care who came from where or what's the level. He wanted to do what's written in the music. For him, it was that was the goal. So 1999, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there was no computers. It's a completely different era, which meant that 3 weeks we worked together for 24 hours. Arabs and Israeli and some Germans, because it took part in Weimar. And it was really magical 3 weeks of my life, because we just spent time together. Edward was there, and every night every evening we met. Maestro Barenboim and Edward-Said were sitting there, and we had a long discussion. And at the end, he just told Yo-Yo Ma, should we play something? What do you want us to play? Who has music? Okay, let's sit together and just read through. So it was really a phenomenal memory from that time. I don't know.
Thank you. Wonderful. Samir, do you want to say a few words about your experiences? You're the youngest of the three musicians
of the
here.
Three musicians here, yeah.
Well, you're the youngest person on this panel, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Please.
I don't know where to start, honestly, but I guess my experience in both the Akademie and the Divan was that of an intensification of my love for thinking, and then the intellectual aspect of reading music, for example, and just kind of analyzing what went through in my day, because a lot of the time I felt that these encounters with the musician, the new music that I was seeing was, as Miriam put it, unsettling. As Misha said, it's a new encounter, so you're curious about it, you want to learn about it, and I felt that it was very emphasized in my education at the Akademie, and also in my experience at the Divan Orchestra, and it's such a nice feeling to have, and I feel that it is very true what Mariam said and Misha. There's an example from, do you know Charles Rosen, the pianist, American pianist? He held a lecture in a university once, and he said that your first experience or your first impression of a new piece of music is actually inferiority. It's that you feel less, you feel intimidated, because there's kind of a new power structure that you're not aware of and that you're kind of ignorant of, and then the next step is to actually confront it and deal with it. And I felt that was actually the main thing that I got out of my experience, is this new practice in my life, in the sense that if I see something new, then I want to have the same feeling that I've had when I first came into Divan, or first encountered an Israeli, or first started learning contemporary music, which is very reflective of our times at the moment. And yeah, I feel that was, I always feel that there's a necessity for music. It's just so necessary in our world, and it just is a tool to express that which cannot be put into words. I know it's a cliche, but that's very true. And it's just wonderful to feel that and experience that with all the musicians at the orchestra.
Thank you very much. We're now going to be treated to some music. No more words for a while. Later on, we'll bring the music. Please go ahead and prepare yourselves. Later on, we will have question and answer with all 5 musicians. And then the two of you can stay there. If people have questions for you, they can ask you if you'd like. So stay in your seats, please, over there. We'll pass you a microphone if anyone has a question. Please raise your hand and identify yourself. Anthony, you don't have to identify yourself. Please, go ahead.
Yes and no. The divan is not a full-time orchestra. You see, we play in summer, every summer. We play sometimes during the season. Very often we play during the season, but it's not a full-time orchestra. We have in our midst players from the finest orchestras in Europe. One of our musicians just became the concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic, so that's great. Yeah, so of course there is, but that doesn't mean that he's not part of the divan. You see, so yeah, I mean. Well, when he can come, he plays. Yes, of course. The Vienna Philharmonic are very busy, but he does come. Yes, of course he can. He's a very wonderful musician. His name is Yamen Saadi. He met my father when he was 10 years old, and told my father that he wants to join the divan. And my father looked at him and said, you know, when you get a little older, you can. I said, no. I want to come now. You know. And then my father asked him, how old are you? He says, I'm 10, but I can say I'm 20 if it helps you. and back then already he was so utterly talented and such a marvelous talent for music that it was already there, kind of visible to, you know, what degree he would become an excellent musician. He studied at our academy as well. With Professor Michael Amatin, our violin professor. And yeah, he won the position of concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic just this season. So, you know, one of the wonderful stories of our institutions, I would say. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Margot Viscusi. What is the language, or what are the languages of instruction?
In the academy?
Yeah.
The language of instruction is English, because we encourage them to learn German just because, you know, it's based in Berlin and you know, it might be useful. But we teach our courses and our individual instruction in English.
Ramallah come from abroad.
Other questions?
Then can I say one thing? I just wanted to. I don't want to mention because I don't. You know, it's not my thing normally to praise our institution overly. But our students are really wonderful, and our students have learned what it is to be, you know, socially responsible in such a way that they organized by themselves several small events leading up to a big concert in the Pierre Boulez Saal as benefit concerts for the victims of the earthquake in Syria and Turkey. And really, this was all they're doing. And they've raised over 20,000 euros, which I think is just phenomenal. Also shows, you know, how aware they are of what their place is and what they can achieve through, you know, collective work. I think that's just wonderful. Just wanted to say that.
Anybody else? Yes. Wait for the microphone, please.
Thank you for the performance and for yesterday. I brought my children yesterday, and you were all dazzling and left them dazzled and thinking that maybe classical music is not so bad. I wanted to ask a question about the relationship between the academies and the performing orchestra, and what happens to the children once they graduate from the academies in Ramallah and Berlin, etc.?
You again, unfortunately. Yes.
I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but this seems to be one of those.
You're the dean.
Yeah. So so the academy, that's something my father also stresses is academy in two senses of the word. First sense as a conservatory, so this is what we were talking about, a conservatory of higher education. And the second sense, it's an orchestra academy, much in the way that the large orchestras in Europe have orchestra academies where young, very excellent musicians already participate in the orchestra, and the academy functions in that way as well. In fact, we had in our last 2 or 3 full orchestra tours, I think 30 students and alumni from the academy, including also two teachers, of which I was one. So I mean that's a huge number, and I think that and getting into the divan isn't so easy, even if you study in our place. So I think it just shows that that it's really working. This kind of way, this pathway from our academy into the orchestra is something that I think is very important.
Do you want to say something about the school?
Yeah. Well, for the musicians in Ramallah, after 8 years and they get the diploma, they are eligible to audition wherever they want. And so far, at the academy, they took 4 of them. But the others who do not get in the academy, we try to help them to find somewhere else to apply and continue their education.
If I can just add one small thing, 4 seems like a small number, but it's 5% of our student population, so I think that's huge. Just to put it in context,
Please, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Lily. I'm just wondering, what are the discussions or conversations you have between like Palestinians and Arabs in the orchestra? What are some experiences?
No, that's Why?
Both of you.
Come on, why are you afraid?
I'm not afraid. It's just.
Go ahead. Please.
It's you're asking basically what kind of conversations we have among each other, and you want to know whether it's about the conflict, whether it's about just in general. Okay. I would say it's just pretty much about connecting, mostly on a human level and also on a musical level. And we discuss many things. The things, current world events. We might be discussing something what to have for lunch, and it is important. Life is food. No, I'm kidding. And sometimes it does get into the territory where we think, yes, this is more serious, and we're discussing more profound issues. But I would say that's more seldom than not, because we have the music for that. I have the feeling, because we're on tour right now, and I feel like when we share the stage, there's always this unspoken communication that I really like, and I really enjoy in this group.
I think the idea of the orchestra, of the ensemble, is basically the fact that we can all share a room and we like each other, which seems like a dream or a fantasy to other people around the world. Again, I go back to 1999 because now if an Israeli wants to speak to a Lebanese or somebody from Syria or somebody from Iran, he can just write on TikTok or Instagram, right? It's possible. Nobody will say the government won't know about it, but 1999, it was not possible. It was literally the first time I've ever seen a Syrian person in my life. I left Israel for some holidays, but I've never went anywhere big. But really, that was the first encounter I've ever had. So it was really big, just realizing that basically how much in common we have, and that we can enjoy sitting together and just speaking about life, normal life. And I think that's the base of our human experience in the orchestra.
Yeah, I want to say about discussions at the school in Ramallah. They do a lot of discussions among the musicians, and they encourage them to open up. For example, the girls would like to talk more about freedom, about a different, view of life. Whatever they like to talk about, they are encouraged to, talk about it. And this has been proved to be very good because it's helping their music. Also, we sometimes get people to speak to them. Zoom, which you're talking about the internet, we have Zoom now. And Rashid, you gave one of the talks to the little kids in Ramallah, and you'd be surprised how much children know these days.
They know a lot more than adults, I'll tell you. I mean, as a university teacher, they're much smarter than my generation or the generation before me or after me. Trust me. And I'm sure the kids in Ramallah are even smarter. Believe me. Other questions? Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, so I'm kind of like early in my career doing something very different from music. So I guess I'm wondering, like, for you as musicians, how does, what is like the pursuit of music to you? And I guess like, as you go through your daily lives, what does, how does music kind of shape the way that you interact with people? Yeah, just that you meet on the street, or how you like think of new concepts or things like that. Like, how does it, I don't know, music to you, I guess?
I don't know, I'm not quite.
You can go.
Go ahead, Samir.
He's volunteering.
So right now I actually work in an artist agency, which means that I gain much of my income through that. But before, I felt, and now still, but to a much lesser degree, because I cannot focus on music as much. I felt that music was a way for me to really focus on prolonging a certain feeling that I have towards something. Because in a piece of music, it goes from the first note, you hold onto it until the last instance of music, and that means that it's a one unit of experience. And I feel like most of the time we live in a very complex society and a very complex global situation where there are many forces dragging you there, back, front, and sideways, and you can't actually control that much of the time. But music for me allowed me to delve into many things that I would say prolong that feeling. And I also feel that with my social encounters, I guess. That's really nice.
Maybe one more question, and then we'll just wait just a sec for the microphone. But just wait for 1 minute. No, it's coming.
Hi, my name is Brigitte. I was wondering if you ever, first of all, if you ever perform in Israel, and how the organization or the divan has been received in Israel itself.
Right. So the answer is no. We have not performed in Israel. That's due to the very simple fact that most of our musicians can't travel to Israel. So namely, for example, the Syrians and the Lebanese cannot travel to Israel. And we are not willing to compromise on some of our musicians just to be able to play in Israel. Yeah. So unfortunately, until now, it hasn't been possible. Of course, it's been our dream. I think everyone in the orchestra dreams of playing in the places that everyone is from, and it's probably the only orchestra in the world that can play everywhere except where the musicians are from. So it's very sad. Actually, we have the concert in Ramallah was so special for all of us that were there, also because it's not something that seems to happen very often. And so that's something to cling on to for us, that we can imagine that this might happen again, but at the moment I'm not overly optimistic, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you for that question. Let me ask you to join me in thanking the musicians and the panelists. Mariam-Said has a few final words before we break up. I mean, break up for...
That I want to put the light on.
He's like his father, he corrects me all the time.
Yeah, that's fine. You have to bear with me a little bit more. First, I want to say that the Edward Said Days in Berlin is the event that will take place this summer at August 26 and 27. And it will include a performance of the West-Eastern Divan Orchestra under the direction of Maestro Barenboim. And it will be followed by a day of roundtables on music and post-colonialism and the continuing contribution of Said's work. And if you are not going to be there, it will be recorded and it will be online. And to conclude, I wish Edward or Daniel were here to deliver their vision of the future of this project. A project that has progressed, in my opinion, much further than both Edward and Daniel had ever anticipated or envisaged. In my opinion, Edward left us almost 20 years ago, and Daniel was able to keep this work going not only out of sheer tenacity and perseverance, but because we all knew that this is something unique and special. It is about tomorrow. Counterpoint is a word my husband used often. Edward knew the word well, knew its flexibilities, inflections, and origin. And I would like to concentrate on the meaning of this word. In music, counterpoint is the combination of two or more musical voices, voices which are harmonically interdependent, yet melodically and rhythmically independent. Edward was the first to realize the application of this word. In his book, Culture and Imperialism, he suggested that we read not univocally, but contrapuntally, that we be aware of the narrative of a work of literature and the historical context of that narrative. By using the word counterpoint, Edward also makes sure that what isn't said in a work may be as important as what is said. But Edward also used the word counterpoint to describe the life of an exile, writing, "Most people," and here I quote, "most people are principally aware of at least one culture, one setting, one home. Exiles are aware of at least two, and this plurality of vision gives rise to an awareness of simultaneous dimensions, an awareness that, to borrow a phrase from music, is contrapuntal." This is also a quotation. With Edward's new meaning attached to counterpoint, we realize that the word is really about meeting the other. When a jagged clarinet line shoots up top and is met and combined with the burnished, supple sound of the cello, we have in music what so fascinated Edward: the meeting, the mingling, the play of it all. In Music at the Limits, Edward writes, and I quote, "Counterpoint is the total ordering of sound, the complete management of time, the minute subdivision of musical space, and absolute absorption of the intellect." End of quote. Counterpoint is not just dull music exercise. Edward described his childhood musical exercise as, I quote, "on the one hand, a dissatisfying, boring drill of piano exercises, and on the other hand, an enormously rich and haphazardly organized world of magnificent sounds and sights." Counterpoint is the chance that we have to interact, to tear down the walls and barriers that divide us, to question, to answer, and to listen. I believe that the Barenboim-Said Academy in Berlin is the house of counterpoint, where we can actively demonstrate the new meaning of the word counterpoint, where students can play counterpoint in their chamber music, can discourse counterpoint in their philosophy classes, and can live counterpoint through their personal interaction with the other. I leave you with this thought. Thank you.